I have some audio for you that is honestly very disturbing, but not uncommon. And it's of this former Supreme Court Justice of Wisconsin. So it's a statewide, he used to be a statewide Supreme Court Justice, again, in Wisconsin, saying to a group of Republicans at a Republican event that it is time for revolution, that people have gotten too comfortable, and that's why they're not going to be able to water the tree of liberty with blood. So some very violent rhetoric. And of course, this is all centering around his false belief that the 2020 election was stolen. And so the idea is we are in a time that, calls for this revolution, this violent revolution, but people are too comfortable. And so it's not going to happen. But this election was stolen, and that's why this should happen. Interestingly enough, though, it's so fascinating. Okay. So the former Supreme Court Justice, Michael Gabelman, he was enlisted by the assembly leader in Wisconsin to go look into these claims that the 2020 election was stolen in Wisconsin. Guess what he got? Nothing. He spent $1 million of taxpayer funds in Wisconsin to look into these claims, and he did not back them up with evidence after that investigation. Is that crazy? And yet he still goes forward, as we've seen with a lot of these people who will do reviews, who will be a part of audits, who make these claims of the election being stolen. They themselves get to look and see that that's not true. They aren't able to find evidence to back up those claims after giving access, or after being given access to more intimate parts of these processes. And they still go forward and make the claims nevertheless. And so he's a great example of that. We're going to get to the audio in just a second here. But first, to read about this, former state Supreme Court Justice Michael Gabelman told a group of Republicans this month that a revolution against government officials over the 2020 election has become necessary, but said people have become too comfortable to water the tree of liberty with blood. Quote, "For the first time in my life, I am beginning to wonder if America's best days are behind us," he said at this Republican Party event. Democrats called the comments disturbing and outrageous, noting Gabelman produced no evidence that called the election results into question after spending $1 million of taxpayer money to complete a probe authorized by Assembly Speaker Robin Vos. Vos fired Gabelman earlier this month after calling his review an embarrassment to the state. So wild. So then here is that audio, and the context is he's saying Americans have become so weak. So then you'll hear him say the biggest problem is not hunger, it's obesity. And that's why we're too comfortable, things like that, to do the revolution that's necessary.
The greatest challenge of our poor in this country is not lack of food, it's obesity. It's a beautiful world. But it's that very comfort that is keeping us from what our founders knew to be the only way to keep an honest government, which is revolution. Thomas Jefferson said that the tree of liberty must be watered by the blood of revolution every generation.
So if you're not tracking with him, he's saying the only way to keep an honest government is revolution. This is what our founding fathers knew. And then Thomas Jefferson, saying that the tree of liberty must be watered by the blood of revolution every generation. And then he's going to go on to say, but people are too comfortable to do that. Of course, suggesting that that is what should be done.
I don't think that's going to happen. And our president has gone out of his way to say, don't even think about a revolution. We've got F-14s and you who talks like that?
Okay. Well, I think it's perfectly reasonable to say, don't talk about a revolution. And something we've brought up before too, when people will say, I need my Second Amendment so that I can fight back against the government, so it, in case it becomes tyrannical. And we say, listen, as it sounds like that quote from Biden was alluding to, you're never going to be able to fight with your little AK-47 or AR-15, I should say, the government's military capabilities, right? And so that concept of this is why we need super high grade weapons is a little bit silly. But to the point of what he's saying, this is in line with so much of the rhetoric that we're becoming all too familiar with on the right, which is that this moment that we're in, it's another 1776. It's time for a revolution against our government or against the left because they stole the election and they're doing all these horrible things. And the interesting part about it is a lot of times I'll have right-wingers come to me and say, well, do you think that revolutions are never justified? Is that why you're denouncing these claims? Our founding fathers did it. That's how we became America. No, obviously sometimes it is morally justifiable or morally justified to, do a revolution, to lead that, to be a part of that. Because you're making false claims about the 2020 election doesn't mean that a revolution should happen. It worked fine. Our election went perfectly great. It was a free and fair election. Joe Biden was elected. Your guy lost. So what you're really saying is, I feel like because Donald Trump lost the election, because the will of the people is not on board with that, that justifies a violent uprising. I've never believed, this is what you must be saying then, I've never believed in our democratic process, because the second that it doesn't go my way, I guess to a significant enough extent, then I want to throw it all out and I want to do a violent revolution. Now, I'm sure a lot of the individual voters, I'm positive, don't believe that. They actually think that the election was stolen. They actually think this would be some 1776 moment. But it's all of these individuals spreading that false information who are going to be the reason that their followers do the violence. Because the Tucker Carlsons, the Alex Joneses, the et cetera, they're not going to be on the ground inflicting violence on people. They're going to be in their mansions hiding away. But if there is some sort of violent uprising, some sort of weird idea of a revolution from the far right, it's going to be those everyday people who have been propagandized. Again, they should be responsible for their own actions. They shouldn't be propagandized. They should be able to see past that. But it's going to be those individuals who are actually hurting other people and being hurt themselves. And that is what's so scary about this and so sad. And so you see here former Supreme Court Justice of Wisconsin saying that it may be time for the tree of liberty to be watered with the blood of a violent revolution. Scary. It's just open now. People just openly call for this type of stuff on the right, and it's very, very concerning. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to support what I do, as well as get access to the full show, all of the stories hours before any of the clips are uploaded to YouTube, plus a weekly bonus show, you can go to patreon.com/Luke Beasley. That's patreon.com/Luke Beasley.